remember the first person you ever killed?
I don't know. Never asked her name. Nothing.
Now you'd like to do her now, wouldn't you?
Which one?
I know the guy's crazy. What I want to know is, can we believe this nut? He said he's killed over 200 people. Just when you do all that?
Just all the time.
In the eyes of a stranger, in the hands of a drifter, there is no mercy.
Seems like killing for me is just like breathing for everybody else. Just can't live without doing it all the time.
In a world where podcasts reign supreme, two friends dare to ask, do you even movie? Hosted by filmmaker Henrique Couto and movie aficionado David D. Neuer. Spoiler alert.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Do You Even Movie? I'm your host, Henrique Couto, here with my good buddy, co-host, and always willing to give a hitchhiker a ride, Double D, David Denoyer.
Greetings, and I don't know about that.
Well, I have to say, the legend of Double D has spread far and wide, further than I could ever have hoped. Last week, we actually had a comment, I believe it was on last week's show, on YouTube, saying Double D coming in a full-blown menace, I think was the comment.
I did
but
see
that was from Bandrew Scott, one of my favorite podcaster and YouTubers. He has many channels, but the one I knew him originally from was called Podcasted.
Yeah.
She's actually the reason I have these microphones. He's I follow his reviews of audio equipment closely. And now, not only does he know audio equipment, but he knows that you are not to be trusted.
I mean, that's fair. After my ice story about what was on the car and everything, it didn't feel the absolute best.
You mean your public safety challenge?
I've been watching a lot of Court Cam. I can't get enough of it, and I can watch all of it on demand with my Friendly app.
Okay. Oh yeah.
And like there was one recently that was do you remember the story about the kids that threw the stuff off the overpass and actually ended up killing that guy?
Oh yeah.
For some reason that kind of registered with me this time around, where it was just like, oh yeah, windshields can break and really hurt people.
Oh well, I mean, the windshield doesn't have to break; it could just cause enough distraction for them to crash their car.
Yeah, that's fair too.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a part of that, so I'm not going to do that ever again.
We'll see. I'll just mark that down on my little notepad of watch Dave until.
I mean, basically at this point, it's until we get another like snow or ice storm, which hopefully won't be for about another week, it looks like.
Oh yeah, we might get 2 weeks of mild weather here. Yeah. We saw earlier this week -7 degrees.
It sucked.
I mean, that was at like 4 a.m. So,
yeah.
I mean.
So my roommate, he recently got a job at the Sheets I was telling you about, and he had to take out trash that night when it was like in the negatives. Yeah, he was not thrilled about that.
I think that was Tuesday.
Yeah,
that was actually Tuesday.
Yep.
And Rachel and I went to see Wolfman, which I had a lot of fun with. I'm getting kind of fed up. Maybe 2024 was a bad example. We had such an overabundance of stuff come out in 2024. Very strong year, but it was just everything had to be the biggest masterpiece of horror of all time. You had Maxine, you had Terrifier 3, you had Nosferatu, you had See, I can't even remember all of them.
I mean,
That's
you
the
had
problem.
Long Legs, you had
Long
the
Legs, yeah.
Substance, you
Yeah.
had Night Swim.
Yeah, well, I mean, but you see, and then people will like, just like you, they'll chuckle about Night Swim, but Night Swim was fun.
I still haven't seen Imaginary, and I'm dying to see
That one was a lot of
I've
fun.
heard Imaginary's fun.
My point is, Wolfman, was it the greatest film I've ever seen? No.
Mhm.
Was it fun and scary? Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Did I have a good time? Was it worth my ticket? Yes. One thing I will say for it that they don't really get across, I don't know how you would, in the trailer, is it takes place in one night.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, it literally one night.
Hell yeah, I
They
love that.
they get to the area, the outskirts of town where his father's old farm is, and then it just starts.
Just starts.
There's no, like, we arrive at the house, we look around, we go, wow, Dad's gone. But no, I mean, it's like they're almost there and they're being attacked by a wolf man.
Yeah.
Period.
Jeez.
Also, whoever it was at Universal's, horror event or whatever that unveiled the monster that way should be fired. Because I really think
they were.
I really think that hurt the movie immensely.
Yeah.
Because they took what was a pretty scary and original design for a Wolfman and then dumbed it down to a Halloween costume, a high-end Halloween costume for Nights of Horror or whatever they call it there. And it takes all the, pardon the pun, all the bite out of the actual look of the monster.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like, majorly. In the actual movie, we only get glimpses. And they're pretty solid glimpses. The movie, it's not the Wolfman, it's Wolfman.
Yeah.
It's not meant to be a new telling of the Wolfman series.
Wolf Space Man,
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
Wolf
because it's not even
Man.
together. Yeah.
And there's no the.
Yeah.
It's just Wolf Man.
Man.
And thanks to Batman, we now know that the makes a big difference. Thanks to DC in general.
Especially in a freaking runtime.
Well, and the Suicide Squad as opposed to Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
So, but it was a lot of fun. I had a great time watching it. Had some solid scares. It had a story that made sense. It had a beginning that an ending that made sense and was established by the rest of the film.
Hell yeah.
Will I watch it a million times? Probably not. But that isn't really the goal every time I leave the house to go see a movie.
No.
I would like to see a new movie in the theater roughly every week.
Yeah.
And the idea that means every year I'm going to see 52 of the greatest movies I've ever seen in my life, like, that just sounds stupid.
I get that.
I just don't know how you would even pull that off.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the thing. And there are so many good movies that come out. It's hard to keep up with all of them.
That absolutely is. I mean, I still want to see Den of Thieves 2, which I know is in theaters right now.
Yeah, it just came out.
Just came out. We have not seen, damn it, what's the one that I'm trying to think of? I think it's another horror film. I can't remember. There's like 3 movies in theaters I want to see right now.
Yeah, there's quite a few. So, I mean, anyway, my point is, like, I saw comments after I went off about bodies saying, like, very mid, fine. I've actually rewatched it a couple of times.
Yeah.
Because it's very amusing. It has a great pace and great atmosphere. But I'm not saying Bodies was the best film of 2022 or whatever it was when it came out. I'm just saying, like, this obsession with, like, it's got to be great. I'm bored with it.
You saw that Substance has like 7 Academy Award nominations.
Which is nuts.
Yeah.
Like, overall, I'm happy about it, but I'm also kind of perturbed because that's the breakout that gets body horror and, like, gross out horror into Academy Awards. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not against it, but I did when I saw it, I was kind of like, of course it does, because everybody loves it. And I loved it.
I was curious if Longlegs was going to get anything, and I don't think it got a single thing.
Nah, probably not.
Yeah,
but
I remember they were actually doing like for your consideration for that movie.
But you put like a former A-list star. I mean, nothing against Demi Moore. I mean, because she also had a small role in Landman.
Yeah,
and she was phenomenal in it. It looks like in season 2 she's going to be a major role
all about that
in it. So no spoilers, but that's really what it looks like. I think it was a wonderful performance. I thought it had a good message. So I have nothing against the movie.
Yeah.
It's just kind of that moment where I'm like, that's the one that pushed it over.
I'll take it.
Well, part of it makes me feel like the Academy Award people are just wearing the backward cap with the skateboard over their shoulder going, hello, fellow kids.
I can see that.
I enjoyed the Substance as well.
I remember like the biggest surprise that I had Academy Award wise is all the way back to No Country for Old Men winning Best Picture, because I did not expect that to happen.
That makes sense though. I mean, that's a Coen brothers, right?
Yeah, but it was just it didn't seem like it, because I can't remember, there was a bunch that was up against that year, like a lot of big titles.
Well, usually they don't run unopposed.
Yeah. Be weird if they did. But no, I just remember that being a big upset, to like the point where our good buddy Andy Kopp even commented that it was like comparison to Silence of the Lambs winning, that people didn't expect.
I would agree though. I mean, but with Coen brothers, it's like you expect it to at least get a nomination.
Yeah, that's
now,
fair.
if Substance won Best Picture, I would be amazed and I would be very happy.
God, I hope so.
Right now, with all of the nominations, unless they win something of value other than like Best Editing or something.
Yeah.
I don't know if they were nominated for Best Editing, but you know what I'm saying. I also don't watch the Academy Awards.
I don't either. I just look at the page the next day to see what won.
I just see who's complaining. I got nothing. You know, I got no love lost for the Academy Awards, but like it does kind of feel like a hello fellow kids. Now, if they get an award of substance, then I will be impressed.
Yeah, no, I would too.
Because you know, if like that gets Demi Moore an Oscar, that would be crazy.
It'd be awesome.
It would be dope.
Yeah.
Has she had an Academy Award before?
G.I. Jane?
Might have been G.I. Jane, maybe?
I think so. I think maybe G.I. Jane.
It would be an incredible thing.
Yeah.
But for now, I'm just kind of like, wow, they're really hoping that like people will tune in that are younger. And that's a big problem with this entire market, with this entire, the film world, is it's like people our age and older are most of it.
Yeah.
The younger people, they're really struggling. Like I remember when I saw the trailer, granted, this was before I found out the movie wasn't very good, for Good Burger 2. Do you remember when I saw the trailer? I think I turned to you and I just said, fuck trying to get young people to watch movies. You millennials have money, right? You'll come and watch it, right? You'll pay money.
That movie was so disappointing.
It was not great, but yeah. So same thing with like, you know, when there was a new Indiana Jones movie, I was like, wow, they're okay, cool. They're just like, okay, never mind. We can't get Zoomers in here. So anyway, regardless of all of that, our movie tonight is a film that is near and dear to my heart for several reasons. And one of them is that for me personally, it was a literal VHS video store discovery.
Yeah.
Which for someone my age is the height of nostalgia. And it wasn't like, you know, I found the tape at no, it was at Hollywood Video right there on the shelf in the crappy clam boxes they used, the weird case boxes they used.
This would have been, not to date you, but this would have been,
well, no,
like,
we're just friends.
It wasn't like release. Like it was like it had been out for a bit, right?
Oh, this tape was from 1992.
Okay.
Yeah, or 91 or 92.
Yeah.
That was at the legendary Hollywood Video near my house that was originally a movie gallery.
Yeah.
And that's where I first saw Evil Ed. They had the double tape of Dawn of the Dead just on the show.
I'm sure you rented multiple times.
You have no clue. Oh my God. I would rent the double tape and I would just watch both versions and then watch all they had like all the foreign trailers on one of the tapes.
The tape, yeah.
I would just watch it all the way to the end. I just wanted more Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah.
So, but that being said, this one was kind of special because I'd never heard of it. I'd never seen anything about it. I'm probably 12 or 13, which is way too young to be watching this
I
film.
would say so, yeah.
The film tonight, by the way, is 1985's, although released in the U.S. in 1991's Confessions of a Serial Killer. And if you've not heard of it, that's your problem. You should rent it on Amazon or rent it on Fandango at home.
99-cent rental right now on Amazon.
Oh, that's so worth it.
Yeah.
It's a great film. It is loosely based on the killer Henry Lee Lucas. And I know what you're thinking. Well, there's Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. They made this first.
Yeah.
This was made first. By the time it was ready to come out, Henry had gotten all the buzz. And as I said so eloquently a couple weeks back, it's kind of like Paul Blart Mall Cop and Observe and Report.
That's such a comparison that so works.
Well, and nothing against Henry for being Paul Blart Mall Cop.
Yeah.
The cruel irony of this is Paul Blart Mall Cop in this example is that Henry, although it's intentionally grimy and all this, it's much more polished.
Yeah.
It's very character driven, phenomenal performances, very artistic.
Yeah.
And it became a cult phenomenon, as to where Confessions kind of came and went and is very slowly
getting back
revved up.
Yeah.
and become something that people are interested in watching. And now you could, I mean, when we found out you could rent it in HD or buy it in HD, we flipped out. And then a year later, it was on Blu-ray.
Yep.
Couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Because it had been picked up by Roger Corman and sat on for a while, and they slapped the notorious Hannibal Lecter mask cover on it, which is what I remember. But then there's a second part to it. I don't know when you want me to tell my Robert Burns story, if you want me to wait a while.
I would say let's just go ahead and talk, because I think at this point this will give kind of an introduction into it as we get into it as well, because I mean, Henry Lee Lucas, as many know that are listening to this, is one of the most notorious serial killers because he claims to have killed more people than he possibly could have. Yeah,
like and not like possibly could have from a like a moral standpoint, but from a literal logistical standpoint. He would claim he killed people that were 450 miles apart within like 8 hours. Yeah. He claimed he killed people that were still alive.
Yep.
Yeah.
Into the numbers of 200. Like he claimed over 200.
Yeah, over 200 people he claimed he killed. Yeah. And then like later on, when the Satanic Panic happened, all of a sudden he claimed that he was a part of a cult.
Yep.
He was a liar. Yeah. He was a pathological liar who a lot of people think he probably killed maybe 10, 15 people.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that neighborhood. But at the time of this film's being made, and at the time of Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer being made, people were buying it. And it was very scary.
Oh, yeah.
Because when people would say, how did you get away with this? He was like, I just kept driving up the highway.
Stuck to the highway. The roads I knew.
And people were mortified because they were like, it's that easy to just keep getting away with it and getting away with it. And one thing that Henry did that I didn't like that Confessions does right, real quick, and then I'll talk about Robert Burns, the lead actor in Confessions. Even though they mention that Henry is like a vagabond and he just hangs out in Chicago the entire movie.
Yeah.
And one thing I like about this one is while it's very Texas centric, which is where Henry Lee Lucas was caught and all that, he's on the road like the entire film until the third act, basically.
Third act, yeah.
So, which I like because I feel like that gives more of a kind of an accurate depiction of Henry Lee Lucas.
It gives you a curveball in that third act because, like, you know, we'll get into it when we talk about the movie, of course, but you know, you're on the road with him that entire time, and then he gets to a place where it's just like he has prime victims at any point that could be on the pickings, and you're just basically waiting to see what happens.
Yeah. And so anyway, we'll get into the details, but I have a very personal story about Robert A. Burns, the gentleman who plays, what was his character's name?
Daniel Ray Hawkins.
Daniel Ray Hawkins. That's the other thing. This film took way more of the actual, at the time, known Henry story than Henry did, but they changed all the names as to where Henry used all the names for the most part. Yeah. Which is a bizarre element.
It is odd.
So Robert A. Burns, you'll go through his filmography, but he became very well known as a production designer. His first feature of note that he was the production designer on was a little Texas indie movie called The Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Never heard of it.
Me neither. But he was the guy, when you watch that film, he was the guy who made the bird cages full of chickens, the furniture out of bones. He was the guy who did all of that and a lot more. He also did Reanimator, The Hills Have Eyes. He did a lot of interesting pieces. And this is the only film where he was a lead actor. He had popped up in Friends films, you know, here and there, and he was notorious for being lighthearted and fun to be around.
Yeah, exactly.
And one year at the Cinema Wasteland convention, I want to say in 2002.
Oh, cool.
It would have been 02 or 01. Robert A. Burns was a guest. And I got excited because I was a Confessions of the Serial Killer fan.
Yeah.
Even though most people were there for him to sign Reanimator stuff and Texas Chainsaw stuff. So I remember, now I'm a teenager and I would have been 15, 16 years old, maybe even 14. When he was sitting at his table, I actually found myself terrified of him because they didn't do much to his appearance in Henry. Or in Confessions. And neither did they in Henry. They let's just let the actor be the actor. They didn't do his eye and all that weird stuff about him. So when he was sitting there, literally, he was just the character from Confessions, and he creeped me out a little bit. So I had to boost myself up, and then I went over and talked to him. So nice, so excited to talk. But when I said that I was a big fan of Confessions of a Serial Killer, he lit up.
That's awesome.
He was just like, man, you're kidding me. And I was like, no. And he told me about how he had to audition at the last minute to be the lead. And he had watched tapes of Lucas and other serial killers.
No shit.
Because he had seen other auditions.
Yeah.
And they were playing, just kind of like, maniac guy. So he watched it and he was like, I just sat down and I was like, yeah, I killed her 5 weeks ago. And he was like, I just played it so cool. Because that's how those guys do it. It's like they're telling you what they got at the grocery store.
Yeah.
And we talked for 20, 30 minutes. And then he told me, he was like, I got to show you something. So he gets out a suitcase, a little briefcase thing, and he opens it up. And there are 20 or 30 folded posters for the original video release of Confessions of a Serial Killer.
Hell
and he
yeah.
literally says, I found these in the basement. You should have one.
That's so cool.
Now, I can't remember, sincerely, I cannot remember if he charged me $1 for it or if not. But he was like, you should get one of these. You should have one of these. And he signed it to me, wanna ride.
Yes, he did. Because I just saw that poster in your
Because
room.
it's hanging in my bedroom.
Yep.
And that poster has been very special to me for lots of reasons. One being that it's impossible to find them.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I've never seen one on eBay. I've never seen one in a horror group. I have no idea if I was the only person who bought one that weekend.
It very well could have been.
But the next year at Wasteland, or it may have been 6 months later, something like that, he was just there again.
Not even on the guest list?
No, he just was there.
That's awesome.
Robert Burns had never done a convention before.
Yeah.
At that time. And Wasteland was his first.
Which is a perfect one to go to.
And
yeah.
he was mind blown by all the fans and all the enthusiasm and all the camaraderie. He liked it so much, he came back, and I believe both times he was videotaping stuff, like just capturing it because he wanted to remember it for posterity.
So cool.
And he would always flag me down, like if he walked by my table or if I was walking around and we chat a little bit. He was so fucking friendly. And we exchanged an email or two long time ago,
Yeah.
obviously. And one of my favorite stories, which I was not directly involved in, was Ken Kish, who owns Cinema Wasteland.
Mhm.
When Bob was there, Robert Burns was there. It was in April. It was the April show, and it had snowed because we were by the Great Lakes and
Yeah.
everything. And I guess Robert Burns was walking somewhere, and Ken packed up a snowball and whacked him in the back with it. And when he turned around, Ken went, "Welcome to spring in Ohio." It's one of my favorite Robert A. Burns stories. So he was running around the con. He had his video camera out. He was filming stuff. He had uploaded clips to his little website. He had robertaburns.com.
Yeah.
And then a year or so goes by, and I get word that he's passed away.
Yeah.
He had been diagnosed. I'm sure you have the full details, but he'd been diagnosed with a terminal form of cancer,
Mhm.
and he chose to take his own life.
Yeah.
He left a kind of I don't want to say suicide note because that's so heavy,
Mhm.
but he left a message on his website for everybody.
Yeah.
And it literally said I'm paraphrasing because I'd never looked at it again, but he basically said like, I'm a movie fan. I've always been a movie fan. I love movies, but I've never thought it was wrong to walk out of a movie if you were positive that you were no longer going to enjoy it. And the picture he put was a picture he'd taken of himself laying in front of a tombstone I think he'd built that said Burns on it.
I've seen that picture. Yeah.
And possibly one of the first like acquaintances that I ever knew to die.
Yeah.
Very possible.
Yeah.
Because it was 2004, so I'd have been 17, 16 years old. I hadn't even had a grandparent die until 2 years later.
Jeez.
So that made this movie and that poster mean an immense amount more to me.
Yeah. Understandable.
And he was just a real one, man. And sometimes I just stop and think about how lucky I was. I got to have that experience.
To get to meet him, yeah.
To meet him, to talk with him, to nerd out about movies and to nerd out about his performance, which he was very proud of.
Yeah. And you should be.
Yeah, yeah. But a guy who was a guy like Robert A. Burns, who was larger than life in every way. This big old Texas cowboy guy, loud voice, lots of jokes. Never really wanted the spotlight, though. It was the weirdest thing. In a room, he would get all the attention.
Yeah.
But he never wanted to be on camera. He never wanted to be a big actor. He never tried to be a lead again that I know of.
Yeah.
he was just Robert A. Burns. He was just this guy.
Yeah, he was talked about immensely on the commentary track on this disc. Nothing but great things to say about him, from the director to the cinematographer to the co-star who plays Molly in the movie. They had nothing but amazing things to say about him.
Yeah. I've never heard a negative word about him.
Yeah.
I mean, the worst I've ever heard about him was when he would put his foot down about safety on the set, or put his foot down about animal protection and stuff like that. Those are like the only negatives I heard, is like, yeah, Robert Burns wouldn't let me do this because he said it was too dangerous for the animals on set, or he said it was too dangerous for this or that.
He would know.
He would.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Robert A. Burns was a great dude. And I'm so glad we could talk about this movie. And I'm so glad that I could kind of share it with people. I've shared it with a lot of people over the years.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I didn't know him that well.
Yeah. Obviously, I get that.
But he left a real mark on me.
Yeah.
So that's all. And it should also be mentioned, man, like, I was a literal kid.
Mm-hmm.
And he would go out of his way to be super friendly, to give me a little shout, give me a wink, give me a point, stop and talk to me.
It means a lot.
Yeah, no, it really fucking does.
It really does. No, I mean, as somebody who has been going to Wasteland since 2007 now, and I actually just reserved my hotel room today for April show.
Ooh, la-di-da.
And it's just, that's, to give Wasteland a good moment here. It is a convention unlike any other. I mean, you when you go to conventions like Days of the Dead and Horror Hound, like, they have the standard convention feel. You've got the room where the celebrities are, you've got the room where the merch is, you've got the bar. Walking Dead had taken over, big time when I was in college. So, I mean, those conventions were nothing but that. Wasteland has always been that convention, to where the people that they get may not be very popular names, or may have done like very cult films in that regard. But I've never met anybody that's like a legit jerk at Cinema Wasteland.
I've met tons.
I mean, I get that.
But that doesn't mean that it's not a great time, a great show, and a place where in many ways I grew up.
It's a very intimate setting, more than any other con.
Yeah. It's at a Holiday Inn ballroom.
Yeah.
I mean, now it's a Best Western, but that's a conversation for another day.
So, are you ready to get into Confessions of a Serial Killer?
Why the hell not?
All right. So, Confessions of a Serial Killer, 1985, as Enrique said, doesn't come out until 1991. 1 hour and 46 minutes, rated R for basically everything.
Yeah, that's a very good way to put it.
Yeah.
There's swearing, there's killing, there's raping, there's just everything under the sun.
There's a lot. So the IMDb synopsis says, after being arrested, a Texas man begins confessing to the brutal murder of over 200 women. He recounts his random selection of victims and his traveling companions, his friend and his friend's sister, but the police can't be sure whether to believe him or not until he locates a body and shows them some Polaroids, based on the true story of Henry Lee Lucas. That's synopsis.
A bit wordy.
Yeah. My synopsis: when serial killer Daniel Ray Hawkins is arrested, he begins to confess to multiple unsolved murders to Sheriff Will Gaines, who doesn't believe him until Hawkins leads him to a body.
That's pretty good.
I thought so.
I mean, yeah. I'll give you a mild-mannered applause.
Ooh, I'll take it.
I mean, no, that's pretty good. I mean, it's really just what happened to Henry. He gets picked up. He starts confessing to a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, they got it down to the fact that one of the reasons they think he was confessing so much was his treatment was better when he was confessing.
Yeah.
He'd get to leave to go take them around places. They'd buy him fast food, most famously his hamburgers and milkshakes, which he loved. And that was one of the big impetuses for him confessing to so much, was the cops were so much nicer to him. The more they would show him a picture of a dead person, he'd go, I killed them. Because they were so happy to be closing all these cold cases.
Yeah.
And whether you think that was from a place of who cares, let's pin it on him, or it was from a case of legitimately like, we have so many unsolved murders, because Texas has an immense amount of unsolved murders.
Yeah.
A crazy amount, and a crazy amount of murders too. So especially in that era.
Well, I mean, yeah, 1974 is when we get the text for the original of the movie and everything. But like, people forget that like the 70s and 80s was the haven of serial killers.
Well, and violence and murder in general was insanely high in the 70s, 80s, the 60s even. There was so much violence and murder.
Yeah.
It was becoming very commonplace. It's a cruel irony when you watch the movie Killing of America, the shockumentary.
Yeah.
But like, they talk about like how awful and violent the United States is. The cruel irony is that they stopped. I mean, that movie was made when we had one of the greatest improvements in crime and violence and murder in America, which was through the 90s into the early 2000s.
Correct.
So literally they were at the height of when, I mean, you could literally, there were like bomb threats being called into schools daily all over.
Yeah.
Sometimes places were blowing up. There was a point in our in our history in the 70s, especially, where like some place would blow up and they would literally have to be like, who did this?
Mm-hmm.
They would literally have to be like, was it like a left-wing group, a right-wing group? Was it the Black Panthers? Was it the Weather Underground? Was it neo-Nazis? Was it Palestine people? Like, they literally would be like, we got to wait until somebody claims it.
Until someone claims it, yeah.
And we forget that a lot very easily, that times were very, very scary back then.
Very scary.
So, and this is a good example, because that was kind of the height of when we understood serial killers were a thing, was in the 70s.
Yeah.
Basically, I think really after the Manson murders was when people started to really go like, who are these psychos?
Yeah.
And how can we learn about them more and send them wedding proposals if you're a white woman?
It definitely amped up true crime interest when Helter Skelter was released.
Oh, yeah. No, without a doubt.
Both in book form and the original movie.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And the sad truth is, a lot of these people like Henry Lee Lucas or Ed Kemper or any of these notorious serial killers, they were all just like poor people.
Yeah.
And this was like, in that era, especially, like, it was like, if you wanted to become famous when you were born the way like those guys were born, you either got good at singing, you got good at acting, or you killed a bunch of people.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So our taglines include for the movie, a step inside the mind of a killer.
That's pretty good.
A true story of America's most twisted serial killer.
That's pretty all right.
That's it.
On the poster I have, it doesn't even have a quote about the movie. It just says Henry Lee Lucas is not only the most, whatever serial killer, but possibly in the entire world, or something like that.
Wow.
And it's the quote from a guy who wrote a book about Henry Lee Lucas, which I love, because it's like, it's not even technically about him.
He might be the guy. There's a brief like 7-minute interview with a guy on the disc for this, and it is about Henry Lee Lucas, and it was the guy that did a TV special on him, or like broke the news report.
It could be. Yeah. I just remember looking at it going, that's not a quote. It was a quote, but it was just about Henry Lee Lucas. It wasn't about the movie itself at all.
So Confessions of a Serial Killer is currently available to rent or buy on Prime, Fandango, wherever you get your movies at. I will once again shout out the Blu-ray from Unearthed Films and MBD Entertainment. Beautiful transfer, bunch of bonus features, and first time it's been available on Blu-ray, but first time it's been available in a decade plus?
Well, I don't believe it ever had a Region 1 DVD.
I didn't at all.
It only had the Region 2 DVD in the early 2000s.
Okay.
So, which was very sought after and was cut.
Yeah, that makes sense, because I mean, this is the full director's cut that we have.
Yeah. No, this version was almost seen nowhere. Now, the VHS I saw had most of the heinous stuff in there, because I'm scarred for life. Yeah, I was a child watching it. So I remember it very vividly.
Yeah, because I mean, I think, let me just pull it up, because I've already got it pulled up here. I think the like actual theatrical cut is like 15 minutes shorter.
Really?
Let me check. Let's see. 1 hour and 20. Yeah, 89 minutes is the original runtime, and 100 and hour and 46, so 106 minutes.
I'd have to look at what the differences are, because they might have cut out a lot of jibber jabber too.
I know that the a lot of the surprising deaths that I'll be talking about here in a second are missing from it originally.
Well, the theatrical cut too. Yeah, they were probably trying to. I don't know, because that VHS had most of the heinous stuff. I mean, it had some of the really disgusting stuff in there that if they didn't cut that, what the hell would you cut?
Yeah, fair enough. So our director and writer on the film is Mark Blair. His only credit is 1985's Confessions of a Serial Killer.
And that's a fake name.
That is a fake name, yes.
Yeah, I forget his real name, because I just...
something.
You do your thing.
Cinematographer on the film, Leighton Blaylock. He gets his start as a second unit in DP on The Adventure of Jody Shannon in 1978, Save the Dog in 88, Heartbreak Hotel in 88, Dream Date, The Hotspot, Another Pair of Aces, Three of a Kind, Dazed and Confused, Blank Check, 8 Seconds, Without Consent, She Fought Alone, Suburbia, Roller Girls, Band Slam, Open Windows in 2014. It wasn't until 1985 that he gets his first director of photography on Confessions of a Serial Killer, then goes on to be the DP on Horizon, Crusader No Regret in 96, Art of the Streets in 2006, Agave is Life in 2014, The Greatest Bond in 2020, and most recently 2022, Robert Irwin, A Desert of Pure Feeling. Steve Irwin's son.
Oh, that's sweet.
Cast in the film includes the great Robert A. Burns, who plays Daniel Ray Hawkins. He gets his start as art director in 1974 on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Goes to be the art director in 77 on The Hills Have Eyes. She Came to the Valley in 79. Tourist Trap in 79. Don't Go Near the Park in 79. Disco Godfather in 79. Microwave Massacre in 79. The Howling in 81. Full Moon High in 81. Blood Song, Time Walker, Mausoleum, Play Dead, Reanimator in 85. Night Wish in 89. He's also an actor in 1979's Microwave Massacre.
I don't remember him in that.
He's one of the construction workers in the bar.
Of course he is.
The Howling in 1981, Confessions of a Serial Killer in 85, The Substitute Wife in 94. He appears on Walker, Texas Ranger in 95, A Woman of Independent Means in 95, Muhammad's Radio in 96. He also directed a film, Mongrel, in 1982.
Which I have a copy of.
You did get a copy of it?
Yeah, I got one.
We're going to check that out.
The director's real name was John Dwyer.
John Dwyer.
John Dwyer.
John Dwyer.
Who went on to have quite a career in screenwriting. He was the story, he came up with the story for Captain Ron.
Oh, shit.
I have a feeling
so
he
nuts.
mostly wrote screenplays that went nowhere or that his name was taken off of for, whatever stupid reason. But he also made quite a career making commercials and industrial films, I would assume around Austin, Texas.
No shit. That's awesome. Robert A. Burns did, of course, unfortunately pass in 2004, May 31st. He was 60 when he passed, and as Henrique mentioned, he did have cancer, but he did end up taking his own life to avoid the pain of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was terminal.
Yeah.
I remember that much.
Dennis Hill in the film plays Moon Luton. He gets his start in 1982's Mongrel. He's also in The Innocent in 85, Confessions of a Serial Killer in 85, Red-Headed Stranger in 86, Murder Rap in 88, Ned Blessing, The True Story of My Life in 92, The Underneath in 95, The Secret She Carried in 96, Friday Night Lights in 2004, The Sarah Silverman Program, Nuggets in 2007, and last, Into the Blue 2, The Reef in 2009. He unfortunately passed in July 2nd of 2014 at age 64 from cancer as well.
Wow. Yeah. Young guy.
Berkley Garrett, who plays Sheriff Will Gaines in the film, he gets his start in 1983's Tender Mercies. He also appears in Cloak and Dagger in 84, Confessions of a Serial Killer in 85, Red-Headed Stranger in 86, and he unfortunately passed May 8th of 97 at age 71.
Wow.
So what was your first time watching Confessions of a Serial Killer?
Well, as I said, renting the tape from Hollywood Video and sitting alone in my dark teenage bedroom and being mortified.
Yeah.
And it left quite an impression.
That's fair.
That's my that's my story.
I had found out about the film from an ad preview on a VHS or one of my many trailer sites I looked at back in the day, like Video Detective and whatnot, and luckily tracked down a VHS copy at a flea market. It was at Caesars Creek Flea Market, actually, and there was a dude that had a booth there that had a bunch of VHS tapes that you normally wouldn't find anywhere else, and I knew on my last visit that he'd had this, and so when I found out what it was, I was like, I have to see this, so naturally grabbed it when I was there the next time. The film genuinely disturbed me by its dirty feel, the display of violence, and Burns' performance just made me uneasy, but I could not look away.
Yeah, that's a very fair way to put it.
So then a few years ago, we screened the director's cut, and I was just reminded of how much better I find this film, better than Henry, but I will go into that once we get towards the end. But genuinely, this was a film that just knocked me flat on my ass the first time I watched it.
Yeah, very fair assessment right there.
So our movie breakdown as we get started into this, it is June 4th, 1974, as we see that this is the reporting of one of the most brutal and violent acts that had perpetuated the country at this point. And we see Daniel Ray Hawkins driving along the interstate late at night, listening to the radio. He comes across a woman who's broken down on the side of the road, and he offers to help the woman with her car. She tries to start it, and Hawkins keeps an eye on her before telling her it sounds like the carburetor trouble, and he cannot do anything about it, but he is happy to drive her to one of the nearest gas stations.
Of course he is. He's very happy to.
She seems nervous at first, but he reminds her it's late, and she may not get another one passing by anytime soon, so eventually she agrees. He walks her to his car. They drive off, leaving her car on the side of the road with the flashers going off. Once moving, Hawkins starts clearing trash out of his car, so he's just moving stuff off the floor and out of the seat and everything. Causing her to comment, it appears that he's been on the road for a while.
Yeah, and he replies, "Yes, ma'am, I have been for a long while." And his look, he's just he's got curly hair, kind of a little disheveled, unshaven with a mustache, and just a pair of thick horn-rimmed glasses.
Yeah.
Kind of just some guy.
Yeah, everyday average
Actually,
guy.
kind of looks like
Don't
you.
Don't even.
I mean, not... Wait, you've even got curly hair.
You can't tell. Pulls my hat down further.
Oh, Lord.
If I take my hat off right now on the show, I don't know what my hair is going to look like, but there's a lot of hair up there right now.
We're not ready.
So silence permeates between them for a bit before she adds that she has also just left Chicago yesterday morning and has been driving since. She's moving to San Antonio to start a new job Wednesday. And that's when a gas station comes into view, which Hawkins drives right past.
Yeah. It's a great scene, too. It's very, very, very tense.
Yeah. So the woman asks him to pull over so she can get out here and walk, but he just keeps on driving, putting up his window because at first he was smoking a cigarette when they started driving. Hawkins looks over to her with really no expression. He just has a stare, basically.
Yeah, he just kind of acknowledges she's there.
Yeah.
And then looks back at the road.
So the woman begins to cry, stating her boyfriend and her are planning to be married in 3 months, and she begs him, even offering money to be let out, promising she won't say a word to anyone. Hawkins keeps driving down the dark road and pulls off to the side, stating he's sorry he took her out so far, but he'll take her back to that place now. And she tells him, no, just let her out here. She's fine.
Well, the way he explains away what he's doing is he acts like all, because she's scared as shit.
Yeah.
He acts like he's basically just like, oh, I just thought maybe we could, we'd fool around or something.
Yeah.
That's what I was hoping, but no, you're right. Like, and she's just like, no, I'll just get out anywhere.
Yeah.
Anywhere's fine.
So he gets out, and the woman goes to the door, finding it locked from the inside on his side. Eventually, Hawkins comes around to her side, and as she's crawling out of the car, he's taking a knife out of the back of his pocket, opening it, and then he slashes her throat and proceeds to stab her. And that's when we get a smash cut to the black text, or the black background, white text, Confessions of a Serial Killer.
Yeah.
Hell of a start.
And it tells you exactly what you're in for.
Yeah, and just like with Henry, a very unsettling score. I'm going to give the composer credit towards the end in the trivia, but this is a really good score that I really hope I can track down here soon.
Yeah, it's a solid score.
So sometime later, we find Hawkins has now been arrested. He is being questioned by an officer about the woman's murder. Hawkins remains silent the entire time while the two cops try to intimidate him. Meanwhile, Sheriff Will Gaines watches on the other side of a two-way mirror, commenting they're never going to get anything out of him like that. So Sheriff Gaines goes into the room, telling the boys he's going to take it from here, and he also sends one of the cops out for cheeseburger and fries, even asking Hawkins if he likes chocolate shakes, which he does.
Of course he does.
So he agrees to, and Gaines introduces himself, giving Hawkins a cigarette and asking about the other people he's murdered. Hawkins tells him he prefers the name Daniel, and he'll talk to Gaines, but no other cops. So Gaines then asks Hawkins about the other murders, and Hawkins states he's murdered at least 50 people that he can think of. Then Gaines states that's a lot of people and asks how does he remember the first remember the first murder he ever did. Hawkins states that he does, and he doesn't know her name, but it was 20 years ago and he was 15. So
when I was 15.
We flash back as Hawkins exclaims he was going out to a local brothel to get some action, but he saw one woman starting to leave, so he got out of the car and followed her. Eventually, the woman turns around, asking Hawkins what does he want, but he remains silent. She called him a creep and began to walk away. He goes to grab at her, and she tells him to stay away. Hawkins then picks up a block of wood and charges at her with it, describing it as something began to push inside of him. We watch Hawkins beat the woman to death in the rail yard as the blood begins to splatter and puddle. Hawkins then comments that when she stopped moving, he knew she was ready, but then he was so scared that he got back into his car and left.
And
the details are grisly in the film.
Yeah, and every death, there are very few that are like the scene later on. The only scene of murder in this movie that pulls punches is literally the murder of 2 young children.
Yeah,
that's the only one you don't get like up close grisly detail.
Personal, yeah. Well, you don't get the one hitchhiker because you just see her get in and then we see her body.
Oh yeah, well that was for artistic.
Yeah.
But seeing her body was grisly.
Yeah, the body's grisly. Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, but nearly every kill is depicted intensely.
Because I feel like, to be honest, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's like really only 4 on-screen murders in Henry. Because you've got the one that Otis breaks the neck of in the car. You've got the family, of course, that's filmed on camera.
Yeah.
TV repair guy.
Yeah.
And then basically, spoilers, Otis.
You might be right.
I think that's it, because I think mostly we're just seeing a lot of panning over to the corpses.
Oh, the aftermath and stuff, which was incredible. An incredible way to do it.
No, absolutely. So we cut back to the interrogation as Hawkins exclaims it was exciting, and he pulled over down the way to pleasure himself. He reveals it would have been July 1960 in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Gaines asked him if he ever told anyone else about this, and Hawkins states he did not. He just went home to his mother, and Gaines asked him to go into his home life, as we now cut back even further to see Hawkins as a young child with his sister. And he starts to think. We cut to the home where we see a man in the wheelchair. We hear Hawkins exclaim that was his father, who was injured in the war and basically was left in the wheelchair. His mother really didn't tend to him much. We see his mother come home with two men as Hawkins and his sister watch from the other side of the room. We watch his mother start to flirt and play with the men as one begins to grope her. Hawkins exclaims that she would have sex right in front of the children, and this would be a nightly occurrence with different men. Right then, we hear a gunshot go off. His mother goes to check, and we see that his father has taken his own life.
Yeah, his father, who was some kind of a war veteran, who was confined to a wheelchair, forced to just kind of witness
everything,
all of this.
Yeah.
Not only witness his wife's infidelity, but the mistreatment of his children at the same, which is just hellish,
horrifying.
And that was in the tape I watched. That's why. Oh yeah, that's why I'm like, I think the VHS had most of it in there.
Yeah,
because I remember that. It stuck out.
So his mother goes and retrieves the gun as we see Hawkins witness all this with his sister. Hawkins then tells Gaines he doesn't want to talk about it, but he was thinking about a woman he picked up 6 years ago on a road he would normally cruise for college girls. The woman goes over to his car, and Hawkins tells her that he's got to get the door, and the woman looks in to see a dead body under a blanket. She tells him that she'll get another ride, and he realizes what she saws, and she takes off running, and he goes right after her into a cornfield. The woman gets a head start and disappears into the corn, but Hawkins keeps after her, eventually finding the flashlight she dropped. He begins to search the field for her as we see her trying to stay low and crawl through the corn as Hawkins keeps shining the light through, trying to find her. We see her stop as the light starts to get close, and then she rolls right in time as the beam almost catches her. This scene is so intense and done so well.
Yes, very much.
So Hawkins, seeing nothing, makes his way through the corn. The woman goes back to crawling away, trying to get away from him as quickly as she can. Eventually, Hawkins catches her in the beam of the flashlight and takes off running after her. The woman then comes to a road, finds a truck pulling up with another woman driving. She goes to the truck, telling her that a man's going after her, and that's when she's like, get in the car, get in the car. So she goes on the other side. Hawkins then beats the glass of the driver's side, breaking the window with the flashlight, but the truck then speeds off. And we cut back to the interrogation as Hawkins finishes saying that was the only time he lost a hitchhiker. Otherwise, when they got into the car, they were mine.
Yeah, and the way he says it, it's so matter of fact with just a glimmer of joy.
Yeah.
It really chills you to the bone.
He never legitimately in this movie has a crazy look on his face, I would say.
No, he gets angry a couple times.
He gets angry, yeah, but he's always kind of collected and just there.
Yeah.
So the cop arrives with the food and Gaines tells him to bring it in. As he goes back into the room with a two-way mirror, he requests a psychologist to come in and hear this, and sometime later, Gaines is back with Hawkins asking how he didn't get caught, and he explains that he stuck to the highway and nearly put 160 miles on one car one year. He goes into another story in Louisiana. We see a woman get into an altercation with her boyfriend outside of a club. He ends up leaving her while Hawkins sees the whole thing. He quickly pulls up, offering her a ride, and she gets in, stating, "You bet your goddamn ass I do." So we see that she asks where they're going, and he tells her that he doesn't know, offering her a beer. She states that she's good because she has what she needs right here, pulling out a joint and lighting it. She even offers the joint to him, and he states he doesn't approve of that, plucking the joint from her hand and throwing it out the window. And that's when she basically says, well, what does it say? That's your fucking problem.
Yeah, and I love how he's mad that she's swearing and doing drugs.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, he's gonna rape and kill her.
Yeah. He adds he didn't approve of her language and the attitude, and that's when she finds a BDSM magazine on the floor, commenting on it, saying nice, and also noticing that there's a pistol on the floor next to her as well. Eventually, the woman asks to be dropped off so she can call her boyfriend, but Hawkins keeps driving, looking forward with no response. She tells him to pull over or she'll get sick, and he tells her go ahead, and that's when she wastes no time at all grabbing the pistol, telling him to stop the car. Which he does.
Yeah, well, I mean, wouldn't you?
So he stops the car and tells her he needs to open the door from her side. She tells him to stay put, open the door, and let her get out on that side, but leave the keys in the ignition. But suddenly, Moon pops up from the back seat, Hawkins' partner in crime, who quickly breaks her neck. Hawkins then adds that they both assaulted her before dumping her into a field and driving off. So now we have another character as we introduce Moon, which is Hawkins' partner in the movie.
Yes, and he's based on the real life Otis Toole or Otis Toole.
Yeah.
I think is actually how you said his name, Otis.
So that is when Gaines asks Moon's name, and Hawkins confirms Moon Luton, and Gaines asks about Moon, and Hawkins tells him he's been apprehended in Baton Rouge, at least that's what he heard last, and Gaines sends a cop to check on this. Hawkins confesses that Moon and he had a sexual relation, and the cop comes in confirming Baton Rouge has one Moon Luton, and they want to speak to them about what they've got. So
yeah, and this is where they're starting to realize, like, holy crap, we got a live one.
Yeah. So Gaines requests more information from Hawkins, and he goes into another story where he and Moon were movers for a woman in Rockdale. We see the two of them in the back of a moving truck working hard, taking a break as Moon goes to wipe sweat from Hawkins' brow. They see a woman in the yard next door chopping away, and that's when Moon notices her too, commenting he was already thinking about paying her a visit later on that night.
Yeah, the way these guys just kind of, I mean, they're drifters, literally, they're drifters. They just drift around finding victims.
Yeah.
That's all they do.
And that's all we see. So later that night, the young woman is in her home listening to a record when Hawkins knocks on the door, introducing himself as the mover for the neighbor, who mentioned that she was having issues with her AC, and since it's so hot, they were happy to come over and take a look and would only charge her $20 to get it running. She's unsure because it's late and she doesn't really know them, so Hawkins offers her $10, and she agrees, and Moon enters behind Hawkins. Moon acts like he's going to go fix the unit in the bedroom while Hawkins sits down on the couch flipping through a magazine. The woman offers him a drink, but Hawkins says he's fine. The woman introduces herself as Karen Grimes, trying to make small talk with Hawkins, thanking him, but he just keeps looking and flipping through the magazine and one-word answers only.
Yeah, he's completely detached at this point until he eventually looks over at her and tells her how pretty she looked earlier.
Commenting that she looked good today outside trimming the bushes. The woman is uneasy but thanks him, then gets up to see what Moon is up to. She sees that her front door is still wide open, but she makes her way to the back of the room, finding Moon sitting at her vanity, putting on her makeup and making himself look very pretty.
Yeah, baby pretty now, mama. Baby pretty now.
That is when outside we see the window shades are drawn, the lights go out, and we hear the woman scream. We see the stereo get turned up, some knives are grabbed from the kitchen. Karen is tied to the bed by Moon as she struggles. The two climb onto the bed, and Moon wastes no time cutting her throat while Hawkins begins to assault her.
Yeah, and this is
probably one of the most grim scenes of the movie.
Yeah, and that's saying something. But yeah, the way they depict her violent assault and murder.
Yeah.
They pull absolutely no punches.
No punches. And I mean, that's one thing with this movie. Henry, I feel like ups the gore a little bit. I mean, I feel it does have some realism to it, but I feel like it does up the blood a little bit, where I feel like Confessions is pretty fucking realistic.
Yeah, no, it's very matter of fact.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I like about this movie is that it's very straightforward, well done in its way. It didn't set the world on fire with its depictions. It is a B movie.
Yeah.
But boy, like they don't shy away from the fact that he and Moon were sleeping together.
Yeah. Which
they shied away with completely in Henry. They don't have any reference to him and Otis or Otis. Yeah. Sleeping together. They also, in a little bit when we meet, Moon's sister, they say she's 16.
Yeah.
And in Henry, they made her 18 or 19 years old. They made her a full-blown adult, and which is funny because you split the difference. You're splitting the difference because in reality she was like 12.
Yeah, she was very young.
Yeah, which is
gross.
Yeah. You think?
Yeah. So we cut back to the interrogation as Gaines asks Hawkins where he dumped the body. Hawkins can't recall, and Gaines asks if he remembers the address or the location, and Hawkins states he can't. Gaines then calls into question his attention to detail, dropping all of a sudden, and Hawkins exclaims most of the time they were pretty messed up, and so it's hard for him to recall details. So that's when his deputy brings in a file. We see Gaines with a picture of Karen Grimes as he pulls several additional photos out to make 3 total, asking Hawkins to identify Karen. So he takes a few seconds before stating he doesn't recognize her. Gaines states he's having issues believing him. All the details so far that he's recalled have been in the newspaper. Hawkins states he's not lying, and Gaines asks him what else was done in Karen Grimes' home. There was something specific that was not reported. And that's when Hawkins asks if he's talking about Moon defecating on the floor, and Gaines asks, was that Moon that did that? Hawkins claims that he would do that sometimes, and Gaines then requests the details on where they dumped the body. Hawkins starts, but a deputy requests him to draw a map. So we hear Hawkins describe the path south as we see Gaines and his deputies now driving out to the drop spot. He confirms they dropped her off in some bushes by a creek, and we see the deputies going to search. We now see Hawkins with a psychologist asking him if he thinks that he could ever change. Hawkins replies he doesn't know. Killing is like breathing to him now. The psychologist thanks Hawkins and leaves going into the two-way mirror room, joining Gaines. Gaines informs him they now have cleared 6 murder cases and more to follow because even Canada is wanting to talk to them now.
Yeah, of course. Well, and this was back when you could cross the border without a passport.
Yeah.
All you had to have was a driver's license, and you could drive up to Canada and right back in.
So the psychologist states he's a textbook case psychotic, but also a constant liar who mixes in the truth sometimes. Gaines asks who he can trust, if they can trust him, adding he's been in jail twice before, and they've let him go both times, and he'll be damned if that's going to happen this time. So Gaines returns to Hawkins, asking him to take a trip tomorrow to help jog the memory. We see them drive on the same place, and Hawkins states that this isn't the place that they did. It's actually further down the road. They drive further down till Hawkins exclaims it's right there. They park as Gaines and Hawkins, along with the other deputies, get out, walking over to a bush where they find human remains in the bushes.
Yes.
Which is basically a full-on skeleton, I noticed this time.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah. So we see the crew now at the drive-thru enjoying more food. He asks if they're going out again tomorrow, and Gaines tells him, well, that depends on him. And Hawkins adds that he wants to help so that they can shut these cases, give the victims family closure, even warning other women not to hitchhike. At this point, a server girl comes up to the window to get Hawkins' shape, and that's when he plays with her for a second, even holding it back, and that's when he states, you're lucky these guys are here, otherwise you'd be mine.
Well, it's a great scene because when he gets the shake, he says that right as she realizes he's handcuffed.
Yeah.
So like it's a great visual moment because she realizes this is a criminal.
Yeah.
And then he says that to her, and the way he says it, he doesn't say it like he's
malicious.
No, he says it like he's saying he'd take her out for a nice dinner.
Yeah.
He's like, you'd be all mine. And it's really mortifying.
So that
mortifying is the term for this film.
Hawkins looks over and comments that there used to be a 7-Eleven in that location as we cut to another story as we see him and Moon pull up to a gas station, which is the place that they were just looking at. Moon tells him he wants to get more magazines and may need him to read him some articles, and that's when Hawkins tells him to get the magazines with pictures, but Moon tells him they don't sell those here.
Oh.
So they should make their own magazine.
Yeah, he's like, we should make our own magazine with all kinds of pictures.
So we see the two make their way into the store as they fill a cart with various food, drinks. We see Hawkins steal something while he gives Moon an eye, and the man starts to check them out. Hawkins asks Moon if he has any money, as the man tells him their total's $52. He says he left his wallet in the car, and Moon states, oh, don't worry about it. As Hawkins goes to walk to the car, Moon draws the gun, blasting the store owner. And that's when Hawkins quickly takes the gun from him. Going into a video section towards the back of the store, we hear a woman exclaim, no. We see 2 shots happen, and that's when he goes back to the clerk, shooting him again, before telling Moon to get a move on. Moon comments, holding a camera, that they can use this for the pictures for their magazines.
Yeah, they're just, he's a little annoyed that Moon just kills the guy.
Yeah.
But he's mostly just like, let's just get going. Mm-hmm. It's like me being annoyed with you because like you got distracted on your phone when we're on a hurry.
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh, Dave, come on. You killed those people.
So we cut to a bus depot as a locker is opened and we see several shoeboxes retrieved out of it. Gaines brings the shoeboxes to Daniel, opening them to reveal piles of Polaroids of him, Moon, and another woman who we find out is Molly, murdering people and also various corpses. Gaines, looking through them, tells Hawkins it's important for him to tell him everything from this point on, and Hawkins says, of course, he just forgot about the boxes of pictures. Gaines asks why he left them at the bus station, and Hawkins confirms they just did. That was the best place to put them. Going into a story about how Moon's sister Molly joined them at one point, and as Enrique said, she is 16. We cut to the 3 of them outside enjoying a meal of fried chicken and beer. Molly asks if she can stay with them for a bit, and Hawkins and Moon agree, as Molly offers to show them how to make some real money at what they're doing, telling them that they should go to the bus station. Hawkins asks why, and she says they'll see, adding Molly showed them how they could use the bus station lockers to store things for just $0.25 for as long as they wanted to.
I mean, that is a life hack.
So we see Molly go into the bus station as a cop goes past them, worrying Hawkins and Moon, but the cop drives past them, keeps going, and Molly returns to the car with a woman named Jasmine, who apparently just broke up with her sugar daddy, and Jasmine is offering to pay for a ride to hang out with them for a little bit as we see them drive off. Short time later, we see the car pulling down the road as it stops, and we see Jasmine's body fall out completely bloody and dead as they dump her into a field before driving off.
Yeah.
Back at the interrogation, Gaines asks Hawkins how many kills Molly was a part of, but Hawkins states he really doesn't know, but a good amount. They got along well, they were even married, just the 2 of them with no official ceremony. Gaines asks how Moon felt about this, and Hawkins states he was fine because he and Molly's relationship did not involve sex.
I mean, that's like the only good thing going.
Good thing.
Yeah, jeez.
An officer enters the room with a cart full of photo albums as Gaines explains that they're all missing persons, not just Texas, but all over the country, and over the last 9 years, I think he says.
Something like that, yeah.
So Hawkins asks if he wants him to show him his, and Gaines says that's exactly what he wants. He wants him to flip through them very carefully and tell them any of the ones that he has murdered. Hawkins flips through a few, stating no to them, but we see a young man. Hawkins confirms that that's one that they did. We cut back as we see the young man walking down the road. As we see the car pick them up, Hawkins exclaims Moon asked if they wanted to pick him up and have sex with him before killing him, and Hawkins agreed. They pick him up, and Hawkins exclaims that Moon tried to put the Moon moves on him, but ended up breaking his neck when the man refused. They chopped him up and would dump pieces of him down the road every 50 miles or so.
Jesus.
They got $50 off him, though, and ate a nice breakfast the next morning, which Moon thanked Steve wherever he was.
He thought, and he referenced that as like a funny anecdote about the meal. He's like, yeah, at one point he said, "Thank you, Steve, wherever you are."
And he laughs. Yeah. So he flips another photo and claims another victim as a young woman he met at a bar and killed her quick. He flips an album again, and Hawkins exclaims he already told Gaines about this one. Gaines says he needs a second and lights a cigarette, asking Hawkins to confirm if this is the school teacher he abducted in a shopping mall, and he confirms that is. He picks up another album and states he knows this one. It's one of his. And we cut back to see a shirtless Hawkins and Molly asleep in the grass. He awakens to watch a camper pull away from a parking lot, returns to Molly, telling her that they overslept and all the cars are gone now. So they're going to have to get a move on and act like hitchhikers since Moon took the car. So they're going to have to kill someone and take their car. It's going to be real simple. We see Hawkins and Molly pack up their things and move out. Molly asks if she should get the ride and have him hide out while they wait, and Hawkins confirms, handing her a pistol, telling her to use it as soon as no one is around. Suddenly, a white car with a flat tire pulls up, and Hawkins exclaims this will be easy, telling her to wait over by a tree off to the side. An older gentleman gets out of the car and begins to work changing a tire. Hawkins offers to help the older man, and that's when he exclaims if he's offering, he'll take it, laying down a Bible on the side of the trunk. He asks the man if he's a preacher, and the man exclaims he's not. He's a doctor, Dr. Cervix. And that is when Hawkins asks if he wants help and begins changing the tire and asks if he can get a ride when they're done. Cervix agrees, and Hawkins tells him he's got something dripping under the car. Molly then comes up behind him as the man goes over to look. Molly draws the gun, but suddenly a cop comes into view across the street, and Hawkins stops her. I mean, the gun's right on the back of his head.
Yeah, she is about
ready
to blow his brains out.
Yeah.
Like, and the way she's just kind of savoring it, she's like, almost. Yeah. Almost. Yeah.
It's like, I would compare her to Sherry Moon in House Thousand Corpses, but she's not that crazy. She's not baby level.
No, she's just matter of fact. Now, Moon is much more of like a mad dog killer type. He's really relishing in it.
Yeah.
But our lead, he's just very stodgy, and she's picked up on that kind of matter of fact
Moon
killing.
Reminds me of the killer in Hard to Die.
Pete Spellos?
Pete Spellos.
Yeah, the actor Peter Spellos, yeah.
Yeah. So Molly draws the gun, but the cop parks across the street, so he stops her from pulling the trigger. That's when Cervix states he doesn't see anything, and Hawkins tells him nothing to worry about, but Cervix says he goes on to explain that he's got a handyman shop, he needs someone who's good with tools, and an apartment comes with the deal if he's interested. The cop siren starts to ring as he drives off, and Cervix helps Hawkins get the tire back into the trunk. Sometime later, we see the three arrive at Cervix residence, and he introduces them to the secretary, who's Doris, who asks to speak with him, asking him what he's doing since he doesn't know them. He shuts the door, and Hawkins and Molly excuse themselves as they begin to wander the property. Coming across a young woman who is immediately spooked by their presence, Monica, who is the doctor's daughter, is introduced to them, and he tells them to excuse her. She's just that way sometimes. Monica gets up excusing herself, and that's when he tells her to get used to them being around, as that's going to be the new handyman.
Yep, because he's a good Christian man who gives opportunities to people who are drifting.
Yeah,
and
yes, he does.
Yeah.
This could not, blow up in his face at all.
No.
So that's when Monica goes to leave. She knocks over a radio, and the radio breaks, or so we think. That's when Hawkins picks it up. He fixes it, and he even kind of gives her a look as she walks off. And she's just uneasy completely.
Well, yeah. No, I mean, he's such a charmer.
So that is when Cervix tells him that to get used to them being around, and Hawkins says that they can make it work, asking if it's okay if Moon stays with them from time to time. And at first, he's a little uneasy about this, and he's like, no, he's a hard worker, and, he's a believer in God. He's God-fearing, and that's what he says. Christian, yeah. He should, and then it should be fine. So he leaves telling them he'll be back later to show them the clinic. Hawkins watches Monica leave, and later we find him and Moon in a car having a drink. Moon comments that Cervix asked him if he was a God-fearing man, and Hawkins tells him not to worry about him. As long as they keep telling him what he wants to hear, they're going to be fine. A young couple with two kids pull up, and Moon makes a comment in regards to wouldn't it be fun to have, wouldn't be fun with one of them. I can't remember what he says.
Oh, something
have fun
like,
with her. And that's what he says, which one?
Yeah, because there's a little child.
Two childs and mom. That's one of the most creepiest comments in the movie.
Well, when you and I rewatched it when it came out in HD, I think it was you made a joke, like we were just kind of riffing.
Oh yeah, because
you
I
were
was
like,
like,
which one? And then he says which one. You're like,
yeah, I felt extremely
I
bad.
was just making a off-color joke.
Yeah. So we see the two drive off and find a stretch of road. Moon pulls over asking if they want to play a game, and he agrees. We see Moon and Hawkins switch seats in the car and drive down the road, finding two little girls walking down the road looking at a magazine. The car slowly pulls up beside them as a shot rings out, dropping one of the girls dead. The other screams and goes off running into the field, but a second shot rings out and drops both of them. So if you're listening at home right now, we just watched two young children get shot dead in this movie.
Yes, and while it was depicted from far away,
it's still mortifying.
Well, but it's again matter of fact, mortifyingly so.
So that is when, excuse me here. Later that night, Monica sits on the couch with her headphones at the house, watching TV as Dr. Cervix tells her goodnight. Moon and Hawkins return as Moon tells him he's planning to leave next check because he's not a fan of working and he misses the old days. We see they're in a new car now as Molly comes out of the apartment asking where they've been. They exclaim they got a new car as Molly asks where, and where did they get it from? And that's when the trunk is popped as a bound and gagged woman cries out, and Hawkins states from her. Moon removes her from the trunk and takes her into the apartment as Molly asks what they're planning to do. Hawkins removes a chainsaw from the trunk.
Gee, I wonder what they're thinking, though.
Crazy.
He packs a chainsaw.
Skin your ass raw.
David, this is a heinous moment. Why would you quote Limp Bizkit?
Monica in the house, hearing sounds of the chainsaw, running, goes out to the house, approaching the apartment slowly as the chainsaw continues running and revving. And this whole time, we're watching her just slowly approach the apartment, like very carefully. And she's got a radio on, too, but it's drowned out by the chainsaw. So there's nothing to worry about.
Of course. Yeah.
Until she gets on the steps of the apartment, the chainsaw dies off, her radio beats for a second, she switches it off, and then she just slowly starts stepping back. And we look and see that somebody is looking at her from the window inside the apartment.
Oh, I'm sure it's fine.
So the next morning, Cervix secretary gives Hawkins a work order for a woman's refrigerator, asking why can't they fix it there? And she comments, Doris comments, because you can't, and she tells them to get help because it's heavy as he and Moon go off to leave. Hawkins comments they're going to do something about the secretary real soon, stopping to admire Monica, who's washing the car. The secretary comes out, reminding them the client is waiting, so the two get in the car and leave. But as they leave, Doris looks over to the apartment and begins to walk towards it. Hawkins, realizing they don't have the address sometime down the road, turns the car around as we see Doris now inside the apartment, going through their things, finding a gun as well as bloody knives and machetes under the mattress. She finds more disturbing things as Moon and Hawkins return, which she doesn't notice. Doris finds a bloody chainsaw in the closet, and Moon makes his way up the steps as Molly comes in, handing the address over, and she's like, did you forget this? And he's like, the bitch didn't give it to us. And also that they forgot the toolkit, so he has to still go inside the house.
Whoops. Whoopsie daisy.
So Doris hides in the bathroom, which behind her we see a very bloody bathtub. She hears Moon inside the apartment, hears him leave, and she thinks it's safe when suddenly Molly pulls back the curtains, stabbing Doris in the stomach. She pushes her off and runs, but Molly tackles her onto the bed, hitting her with the shoe and going to run, but Molly then gets a slash on her thigh. Cervix then asks Monica if he's seen Doris. As she reaches the door, we see Doris right outside the door threshold, seeing the doctor asking about her, but Molly hand gags her, dragging her back inside, murdering her right there.
Yeah, like it's nothing. And that's the scariest part is just they kill, like he even says it one way, it's just like breathing.
Yeah.
And that's the way it is shown.
I mean, he is literally 500 feet from her as the secretary just gets stabbed and then pulled back inside. So that night, we see Moon and Hawkins and Molly outside the apartment as Hawkins tells Moon there's nothing to worry about since she's spread into the field now. The buzzards will get to her. Moon states he's still going to be gone, but he might be back in a few months before driving off, leaving Molly and Hawkins. The next morning, Krivix goes on over a task list before Monica goes out, telling him that there's an emergency. Krivix goes to leave, telling Molly that she shouldn't be outside dressed like this, and that's when he leaves, and Hawkins looks over at Monica before she goes inside. We see Monica getting ready for a shower as Hawkins has entered the house secretly now. He watches her undress, and he gets and watches her get into the shower, approaching the bathroom slowly. A shadow appears outside the frosted glass door as Monica takes no notice. She continues her shower. She finishes opening the door, and we see no one is now standing in front of it. She gets dressed and wanders the apartment uneasy because she realizes that somebody's inside, and she feels like she's being watched.
Well, and it's so important to point out that the first two acts of this movie have been so violent and disgusting and obscene in like every way.
Yeah.
Now, as we're watching her like take a shower and wonder if somebody's watching her, we all know the monsters that are like
there.
right there.
Yeah.
She has zero clue.
No idea.
And it really gets your stomach churning a little bit.
Suddenly, a cop knocks on the door asking if he can speak to her about Doris's disappearance. He explains he wants to speak with Molly and Hawkins, but she says that's fine. So she goes into the garage to get into her car and leave. That's when Hawkins ambushes her, but Monica breaks free, running back to the cop, speaking to Molly. Monica reaches the cop, but Molly shoots the cop dead. Hawkins grabs Monica, and Molly tries to intervene, angrily cutting Hawkins, who wastes no time shooting Molly 3 times, killing her.
Yeah, so this is a part that on a rewatch really hit me hard.
Mm-hmm.
She accidentally cuts his arm.
Yeah, because she I don't know if she's jealous of him touching Monica or what it is exactly.
But it was more, I mean, there was a struggle going on, and she cuts the side of his arm just a bit.
Yeah.
And the moment she does, she goes, "I'm so sorry," and he just he shoots her 3 times, and then after she's on the ground, he shoots her 1 more.
Yeah.
Like that is one of those moments that just jaw drop. She was the most important person in the world to him, and on a spur of the moment annoyance, dead. No problem.
Don't worry, we'll hear him explain it in a second.
Oh, thank goodness. And luckily he has quite a bit of kind words about the whole situation. Thank goodness.
Monica takes off running for the woods, grabbing a log as Hawkins comes up behind her. She gets a good hit with it, knocking him to the ground. She runs farther away into the woods, and he catches up with her, but she shoves him over a log, which also has barbed wire wrapped around it. So he gets wrapped in the wire. She runs back to the garage, trying to find the keys for her car, but she finds no keys, and that's when the camera shows they're on the other side where she was not at. So she runs out of the garage as we see the keys on the other side of the car. She runs to the police car, finding no keys in the ignition, and then runs over to the cop, checking his body and retrieving the keys. She gets back into the car, putting the keys into the ignition, but Hawkins pops out of the backseat, grabbing onto her, and drags Monica off to the apartment. Later that night, Hawkins is back on the interstate driving when a cop pulls him over. Hawkins quickly hides a gun next to him in the seat and pulls over, and the cop gets out, approaching the car, asking him for his driver's license, which Hawkins states that he does not have, reaching for the gun, but then another cop comes along the other side of the car telling him to freeze.
Great fake out, because he thinks the cop doesn't have a partner.
Yeah.
And the partner just pops up and goes, where's your hand going there?
Yeah.
And he's like, to get my wallet.
Yeah. So they have him step out of the car and make their way to the back of the trunk, popping the trunk to find a bag of clothes, and then they find a bloody machete next to a burlap sack, which they open to find Molly's head right on top.
Well, we could explain that. Yeah.
So that's when we cut back to the interrogation as, dear listeners, the final lines of the movie, as Hawkins states he didn't mean to kill Molly, and he actually felt bad for Moon about it, before asking, "Hey, do you think I could get another chocolate shake?" Credits.
Yeah. He just says it, so he's like, I felt bad about it, felt bad for Moon about it. I didn't want to kill her. Y'all think I could get another shake? And that's it. The movie's over.
Yeah.
And that's possibly one of my favorite moments, is just the fact that we've heard a bunch of his, escapades.
Mm-hmm.
We've now found out how he got captured. And now we're seeing the reality is, he's just sitting in a room telling him this stuff.
Yeah.
And all he wants in the world is another chocolate milkshake.
Yeah. I mean, that is absolutely Confessions of a Serial Killer right there.
Yeah. And I find that ending far more chilling than, as much as I love Henry, the suitcase reveal is horrible. It is sad.
Yeah.
But I don't find that nearly as chilling. I mean, the reveal that Henry, just like when he realized that this was getting too complicated, he kills her. Sure.
I mean, given Henry we don't see Henry kill her. That's the big surprise at the end of Henry is they kill Otis, and he's like, we gotta get out of here, and they're leaving together. They're driving in the night, and she's like, what are we gonna do? And he's like, go ahead and sleep it off. And they're in the hotel. And then he walks out the next morning, just him with a very heavy suitcase.
Yeah. And he leaves the suitcase in a
by
ditch
the side of the road and then drives away.
And I get that. But that's kind of why I think this movie sticks out to me as being scarier in many ways than Henry, is the amount of indifference that not only the killer gives, but almost that the film gives.
Yeah.
There isn't some big buildup and he kills his child bride.
Yeah.
She accidentally cut his arm and he's just like shoots her dead. And that's it. It's just that is so much scarier to me.
Oh, I mean, and Burns, as we said, is the absolute performer in this movie, which makes it work. But I mean, I think what I also love about this is just you get a straight up horror film that is not fun, because it shouldn't be. I mean, a movie like this should not be fun. And I mean, that's, as somebody who's a huge slasher fan, it's kind of refreshing to have that, I'm not desensitized. Like, this movie fucks with me.
Yeah, because it just hands you the reality and not much else.
No. Yeah.
There's not a lot of artful moments. There's not it's just scene after scene after scene.
Well, it's like you mentioned, we unfortunately lost David Lynch this past week, and you mentioned that like the driving scenes in this are very Lynchian, but probably not by means.
When he's sitting in the car driving, the car is actually in motion.
Yeah.
They're clearly filming from like a pickup truck or something, him driving, but it's the middle of the night and he's almost floating because there's a light inside the car on him.
Yeah.
And nothing else. I do think the reason it looks so much like a David Lynch kind of like floating driving thing is simply that they couldn't light the highway.
Budget, yeah.
Maybe they had no money to light stuff more. So, but it really creates this eeriness that the highway is just a big, dark expanse where you never know what you might find or what might find you.
Yeah.
Yes.
So would you like to know some interesting things about the film?
I would love to.
So unfortunately, budget information, box office information naturally does not exist for this movie, unfortunately.
Yeah, they didn't suggest anything in the commentary?
Not really, no.
I mean, if I had to guess, unless you already have a guess.
I don't have anything.
If I had to guess, this was a $100,000 to $200,000 budget movie. I really can't imagine a little Texas indie, because it's important to remember, like when we covered Scary Movie, Austin was still a town.
Yeah.
It wasn't a big deal like it is now.
Yeah.
So this little indie movie in 85 shot in and around Austin, I just can't imagine them being able to get more than maybe 100 or 200 grand.
I could definitely see that.
To do it. Because and a lot of those movies, that was the budget range back then. I mean, Reanimator was like 250 grand.
Yeah.
And that was a similar time period. So anyway.
So according to director Mark Blair, shooting the opening scene involving the pickup of the woman broken down on the side of the road was a crazy shoot due to the fact in order for a new take to begin, the car had to speed 80 mile per hour back down the road to the starting position. So that involved leaving multiple crew members to scramble back to their spots, as well as camera assistant John, as well. Camera assistant John Sharon at one point actually called for an emergency stop on the road due to the chaos of a reset.
Jesus, that's nuts.
Lane Fraser, who plays the stranded motorist at the beginning of the film, was a college friend of Sidney Brammer, who plays Molly in the film. They were both freshmen to the University of Texas Drama Department, where Robert A. Burns was also in attendance.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Burns originally signed on to the film as just the art director, but when the original lead dropped out due to a higher paying gig, Mark Blair looked out the back to see Burns splashing blood on women, which would be shots used for the Polaroids in the film. Blair, along with other producers, watched Burns splash blood, laugh like a madman, and Blair spoke up, "There's our Daniel Ray Hawkins." Due to the tight shooting schedule, most of the night exterior scenes were done back to back.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see that. Yeah. Late nights.
The Confessions of a Serial Killer soundtrack was released overseas and actually charted a top 10 in Belgium, the soundtrack done by the great composer William Penn.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Burns designed the interrogation room inside an art studio on 5th Street in Austin, Texas. The building also served as location for the rap party when filming had concluded.
It is worth mentioning, we didn't mention, Robert Burns was also the production designer on the film.
Yeah,
so
that he was.
Yeah.
The independently made film was picked up for wider distribution by Roger Corman. Due to its similarities with Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer in 1986, Corman decided to delay the film's American release, though it apparently did quite well in overseas markets. When the film finally got a wider release in home country, it was marketed as a knockoff Silence of the Lambs, hence the Hannibal Lecter-esque mask on the cover. Due to the graphic content in the film, mainstream video rental stores refused to carry the uncut version. The film then fell into obscurity for many years until its creator regained its rights and gave it a remastered release. Yeah,
which took a long time, and they've been teasing for a very long time that it was coming back finally. Honestly, by the time it did, I had already kind of accepted it wasn't going to.
Same, yeah. The bulk of the cast was made up of people who primarily acted in theater productions. Berkley Garrett had a lot of difficulty remembering the dialogue in the film, or his dialogue, and the film received its first ever theatrical screening at a 2017 Austin Film Festival with several cast and crew members in attendance.
That must have been incredible.
I can imagine, yeah. So what are your final thoughts on Confessions of a Serial Killer?
As much as I want to say you have to own it, because to me, I have to own it. If you consider yourself the horror aficionado, you have to rent it. You have to see it, experience it, see how you feel about this version of the Henry Lee Lucas story, which was made pretty much in tandem with Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer. I really think Henry started a year later.
I think it did, yeah.
So, but in the 80s, being Texas and Chicago, they were like a world apart.
Yeah.
But I think that it's a movie you really need to watch and experience. It's also really interesting that Corman's studio picked it up. They were not picking up a lot of films back then, but they did snap that one up. So I think it's really worth watching, and I hope that thanks to it being proliferated around, it's finally going to get a lot more of the due it deserves. I do wish it had gotten like a fatter, bigger special edition. I wish somebody like Terror Vision or somebody had picked it up and really went ape, but I'm so happy it's here.
Oh, I'm thrilled. Yeah, it's an absolute rent it for me as well. I think it is worth a watch just to see Byrne's performance alone in it. But it goes without saying that this is a very disturbing film. I mean, it has to be with what it's about, obviously.
Yeah.
And if it's not your cup of tea, completely understand it. If you just want to listen to us recap it, that's great. But if you are a horror aficionado, if you are a fan of the true crime documentaries or the true crime films, this is definitely one that you cannot leave unwatched. I mean, it is. I would call it a masterpiece.
And it will not leave you unwashed.
No, it will not.
You need a shower when the film is over.
So speaking of more films to get under your skin, we always like to end the show with a couple of recommendations. My first one this week is 1976's The Town That Dreaded Sundown, currently available.
Interesting pick.
Texas.
Well, it's Texarkana. So some of it's in Texas, some of it's in Arcana, some of it's in Louisiana.
Currently available on Tubi and Pluto TV, this is the true story of a hooded madman stalks lovers' lanes in Texarkana in this fact-based account of the 1946 killing spree. Yeah,
from the director that was famous originally for The Legend of Boggy Creek.
That is correct, yes. Second recommendation, currently available on Max, is 1992's Man Bites Dog. A film crew follows a ruthless thief and his heartless killer as he goes about the daily routine, but complications set in when the film crew lose their objectivity and begin lending a hand.
I mean, I love that movie.
It's so good.
But I gotta say, I thought I knew roughly what your picks would be, and they were not at all what I was expecting.
Go on.
Well, because I was, racking my brain for what my picks would be.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what my contenders were.
Okay.
I thought for sure you would probably say Monster.
I was thinking about
with Charlize Theron and it was Aileen Wuornos.
I was thinking about
that one had a very similar, just grimy feel.
Mm-hmm.
Great film. Then I thought maybe you'd go with, or I was thinking of going with Iceman from 2012 with Michael Shannon.
Michael Shannon, yeah, the Richard Kalinsky story.
That's a hell of a film.
Even though that Kalinsky is one of those criminals that we, again, do not know how much is true.
I believe that he hung out in gay clubs.
I do believe that too, yes. I do believe that too, yes. I actually read the book that Philip Carlo did, which was the guy that did the Night Stalker book.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, I mean, Kalinsky, the story of Richard Kalinsky, from what is told in that book and what we are to believe, the dude killed everybody, apparently, again. So, I mean,
he killed me?
He killed you, he killed me.
Fuck.
But no, yeah, Iceman's perfect.
Yeah, it's a good one. But those aren't my recommendations.
Yeah.
Those were ones I was considering, but I had like three in case you picked one of mine.
One of those. What is yours?
Mine, this is going to be a surprise, but it's a little bit more of a deep cut, but I was trying to think of a serial killer story, like biopic, that really bothered me.
Mm-hmm.
So I went with 2011's The Snowtown Murders.
Fuck, that movie is rough.
Which is available on AMC Plus or Amazon Prime to rent.
Also has a Blu-ray from, I want to say, Vinegar Syndrome, I think.
Well, it is a hell of a film.
Yeah.
It's based on an Australian case called the Snowtown Murders.
Mm-hmm.
Based on true events, 16-year-old Jamie falls in with his mother's new boyfriend and his crowd of self-appointed neighborhood watchmen, a relationship that leads to a spree of torture and murder.
Very disturbing film.
When the whole part where he would make people say stuff on a tape recorder,
yeah,
and then he would call answering machines and so that no one would look for you.
Yeah.
That alone scared the ever-loving shit out of me.
Yeah.
From 2011 Snowtown Murders. Highly recommend that if you need even more serial killer goodness in your life. And who fucking doesn't?
Snowtown Murders line up something extremely light after. I mean, as you would with Confessions of a Serial Killer, for that matter.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. The thing that Snowtown Murders has that I think would make it wouldn't make it a terrible double feature is that Snowtown Murders is very polished. It's a professional feature film. It's an Australian movie, so it's got that little point of separation for us Americans.
And it's got that odd humor in it at times too.
It does. So I think it's a good palate cleanser as opposed to like if you watched Confessions and then like Monster back to back.
Yeah.
That's a lot of sweaty murder.
Yeah. A lot of sweaty murder.
a lot of sweaty murder. So yeah, those are my recommendations. And we do have one email last I checked.
Okay.
So let me pull that up. If you guys want to send us an email, you can do so at doyouevenmoviepod@gmail.com. We love to hear from you. And send us an email. Tell us something we should watch, something we should talk about, or something interesting, or ask us a question, as our good buddy Colin, the young viewer who does not want to be fully named.
Fair enough. Yes.
But he did say, "Hey guys, it's Colin again." So hopefully that's okay. We said, "Hey guys, it's Colin again. I would like to know if you will review the movie The Visit. Thank you so much." I think we recommended The Visit to him.
We did recommend him, yeah.
That would be an interesting one to cover. I believe that was M. Night Shyamalan's return to relevancy, to great storytelling.
Yeah.
I really think that was because I remember I saw that movie on my birthday.
Mm-hmm.
Had a big birthday movie day. And when I walked out, I went, man, Shyamalan's kind of back. Yeah. And then I think he followed that with Split.
Yeah.
So then he was truly back.
Yeah, because then he did Glass, and then Old was after that.
Yeah. I think you're probably right for some reason.
I like Old, but Old messes with me big time.
Oh, Bobby. Poor Bob. Are you over 30? But he said, one more thing. I saw your intro on YouTube. Please explain. Why the army and planes and things? I might be too young to understand, but it is quite confusing to me. So for those who are watching us on YouTube, you get a video version of our intro.
Yeah.
And basically the reason there's all this stock footage of military planes and all this stuff, that is because the music that we had created for the show has that big blockbuster movie voiceover with the big like action movie music. Mm-hmm. So I thought it was funny to have it be about us, but then because of the music, try to make the images match the music. So having like airplanes fly and an explosion and stuff. What it really comes down to is when I was editing our intro, all I knew was that I needed us in it briefly because it was introducing us, and that was all I had to go with.
Yeah.
It was my concept to run with. So I just put that stuff in because it made me laugh. That's why the last shot is the Rock'em Sock'em robots fighting. I thought that was a really funny touch. So you may be a little young to remember the obscenely constant tentpole in a world but that's what we're referencing. It's just kind of a parody of like an epic movie trailer.
Yeah.
For lack of a better term.
It is pure fun. There's no rhyme or reason to it. It's just pure fun.
Exactly. So that is our email for this week.
Awesome. Would you like to know what we are talking about next week on the show?
Fine.
So we are wrapping up Cold-Blooded January. This was, of course, our conclusion to it, which means we're moving into February, and I can think of no better film than to kick off February than 1993's Groundhog's Day.
Again?
Currently available to rent or buy on Prime, Fandango, and Apple. I mean, if you don't know Groundhog Day,
Groundhog Day is not streaming anywhere right now? Damn.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm sure it's probably on cable soon.
For Groundhog Day. Well played.
Yeah, you know.
Well, on that note, we're going to get out of here, my friends. We're going to go catch Flight Risk.
Yes, we are.
But please understand that I really do appreciate you tuning in. Dave, not so much. If you email us at doyouevenmoviepod@gmail.com. Go to doyouevenmovie.com for all the information about everything involving the program. You can also find us on YouTube. If you're on YouTube, please like, share it. If you think you need to subscribe, if you're listening to us on a podcast, make sure you're subscribed on your favorite podcasting app. A couple of star ratings do make a big difference, but we just appreciate you listening or watching. But now it's time for us to get out of here. So there's only one thing left to say, and that is we will see you next Tuesday. Just kidding. Can I get another chocolate shake?
I knew you were going to do that.
He just didn't even care that she's dead.
Nope, not at all.